Good evening, students. This is Basic Robotics. In this class, we will learn new things. That means each and every student can make different kinds of inventions. That is why the class is designed for. Basically, we in our schools or tuition classes, we just learn the theory things. That means we will learn only the scientific things, right? But in this class, we will learn about the practical things, right? How we can give a tool for the electronic components, right? How we can play with them, right? So this class will be more exciting when we are learning this basic robotics course, right? In our course, we will learn different kinds of things. That means we will learn how to make robots, right? How to program the robots by without using any programming, right? That means if I say that we are going to learn programming, so then most of the students will not going to like that one, right? But instead of that one, I have another technique called as visual programming method so that each and every person can understand the program very easily, right? So as a result, our previous class students have done a lot of works. They have invented a lot of new things, right? They made robots, they made Bluetooth controlled robots, they made line following robots, they made obstacle avoiding robots, etc. So as you students have enrolled in this course, you can also make some kinds of projects. For that, we will, in our course, we will introduce a software for you to practice, right? So I will give you a nickname or the ID for you to practice on the virtual platform, right? It's like playing games, right? So you will have the electronics components in the software, and then you can practice by using that software. Furthermore, if you obtain the real components from nearby electronic shop, or you can obtain the components from me as well, right? Here we have three kind, three kinds of kits. That means we have a basic robotics kit, and the medium robotics kit, and the full robotics kit. So we have three basic kits, electronic components set. You can obtain if you want to get them from me as well. I will send it to you via courier service. Right. My name is Nishad. I'm a mechanical and manufacturing engineer. I conduct lectures on robotics, 3D modeling, programming, etc. So in this course, we are going to learn these things, right? So basically, we will learn about introduction to basic electronics, right? That means what are the electronics components associated with robotics, right? We will learn about the components and hands-on circuits. We will have a clear understanding about the circuits used in robotics, right? So you have to identify the other person's circuit as well as your own project's circuit. You have to elaborate your circuit, right? So then we will learn about Arduino basics, right? Arduino basic means Arduino is a controller, like our brain, right? How our brain controls our functions, maybe talking, hearing, reading, actions, we control by using our brain, right? Similarly, in electronics also, we will have a controller called as Arduino. We will learn furthermore about Arduino in our future classes. Then robotic mini project. Students have to make some kinds of projects. Right? I will have I have some videos for you to show what our previous students have done so far. Right? So just uh, give me the video for you to show. Right? So these are the examples our previous class students have done. Right? You can have a look at this one. This one is Arduino LED blinking, right? You have to program it, and then the LED bulb will be turned on and turned off. So these kinds of stuffs you can also make by learning from our class, right? So that is why I'm showing it to you. Object detection system. That means if a person appears in front of a sensor and it will detect, right? According to the detection, we can obtain different kinds of benefits. Maybe we can make an alarm system, or maybe we can turn on an LED bulb, etc. So this one is particularly object detection system. If a person moves in front of the sensor, the LED bulb will be turned on. And this one is automatic smart dustbin system, right? If a person moves his or her hand in front of the sensor, the dustbin will be automatically opened, right? So then we can throw the dust into the dustbin, and it will automatically close after we have put the object. So this is how it works. These are very simple things, right? So after learning from our class, each and every student can make this kind of projects, right? Obstacle avoiding robot. This one is moving. This one will be moving if we turn on the switch. And if there is any object present in front of this robot, it will turn, right? Likewise, the robot will move. Water tank level indicator system. So this is the software I told you earlier. We will practice the electronics components in the software. So this is the software. I will introduce the software in our future classes, right? So then students can learn virtually and very quickly, right? So this is the software. This is the automatic tank level indicator system, right? So we have to assume that this is the water level. If the water level is, so we have to think about the inverse of this one, right? So we have to reverse the direction of this one, right? So then there is a bucket there, right? So there's a sensor is mounted here, right? So then the water level, right? The water level appears towards the sensor. So then all the LEDs will be turned on, right? So the water level it is medium. So then two LEDs will be turned on. Water level is very low. Only one LED will be turned on. This is the system. A previous student did this project as well. LED line blinking. So this is the like a night rider circuit by using Arduino programming, right? So we can simply make these kinds of circuits as well. But don't worry about the programs, right? I will explain how you can program very easily, right? In here, we will learn Scratch programming. That means it's a language that we can work on the programs very easily, right? This is the course designed for grade 6 students, more than 6 students, right? So then each student can learn from our course and make different kinds of projects. Even they can make their codings rather than copying others' codes, right? Similarly, we can also have a software session in in our course. So this one will be an LED blinking, LED turning on and turning off system. We have to program it in the software. I will explain how you can do these kinds of works, right? Next one is home security alarm system. That means if a person appears in front of your home, then the alarm will be automatically activated. Likewise, we can create these kinds of projects, right? This is not only the project that just I have collected some of the project and show it to you, right? But our students from our previous class have done a lot of projects, right? I can't show each and every project to you, right? So that is what they have done so far, right? So basically, in our course, we will look after the mini project, right? So students have to do different kinds of mini projects, and then we will learn about advanced systems and circuits. That means how we can use the robotic communication. That means how we can control our mobile robots by using our smartphones, right? We can control our robots by using our smartphone, right? Those kinds of things will be discussed in our class in future, right? So then it will be a robotic project, right? So students have to make those kinds of robots as well, right? Maybe obstacle avoiding robot, Bluetooth controlled robot. Then after the students have made the project, they have to explain. You have to explain it to us, right? So this is like a showcase of your products, right? So you have to make an invention and explain that particular invention to us, right? So that session will also be there in our course, right? So then I will just quickly explain what are the projects will be covered by learning from this course, right? So the project basically will be covered is home security system. One of the project will be home security system. That means if a thief appears in front of your home, there should be an alarm activated, right? So we will discuss how we can create these kinds of circuits, right? So the next one will be Arduino LED blinking. That means by using the Arduino, how we can turn on the LED bulbs, how we can navigate them, those kinds of stuffs will be discussed. The third project will be object detection system. That means, as I told you earlier, if a person appears in front of the sensor and it will detect the presence of the object, and then it will we can make alarm circuits or maybe LED bulbs, or maybe we can activate other kinds of motors, etc. Right? So next one will be automatic water tank level indication system. What is the automatic? So what is the tank level of water inside a bucket? Right? So we will make these kinds of projects. And also automatic smart dustbin system. That means I have told you, I have shown in our video the dustbin that can be opened automatically when we place our hand in front of that one, right? We can make that one. Obstacle avoiding robot, right? That is also from our video I showed here. You can make an obstacle avoiding robot, right? Obstacle avoiding car. The next one will be line following robot, right? So we have to make a line, right? Along a path, we have to define a path, right? And that path will be followed by our robot, right? We will develop a robot that will follow this line, right? So the next one will be Bluetooth controlled mobile robot, right? So there will be no lines there, right? Only the robot will be there and our smartphone will be there. By using our smartphone, the robot will be controlled, right? These are the projects that we are going to discuss in our class, right? But that means it is not limited to these projects only, right? If I show only these kinds of projects, maybe 2, 4, 6, 8 projects, that means you can do a ton of projects, right? I will just explain one template, right? One sensor template. How can we make one particular circuit, right? By learning that particular circuit, you can make several circuits, right? So you can work on the car reverse braking system, maybe automatic light turns on, turn off system, whatever the system you can make by using these kinds of things, right? And also if we learn these are the examples, right? These are the examples that we will discuss, but you can make ton of projects, right? So just we have to understand what we have to understand, right? Right. So basically, we are going to learn in today's class onwards electronics components, right? What are the electronics components that will be associated in our robotics? If I say that we will engage in resistors, capacitors, cells or batteries, so then what will you think? The students may think about these things, right? Okay, sir, this is the resistor. I can draw this resistor. This is the capacitor. Battery. Okay, sir, this is the battery, right? This is wrong. That means these are the symbols, right? In your schools or in your tuition classes, you have learned about only these kinds of things and bored about these things, right? By drawing this resistance and calculating the values, you have been bored about these things, right? But now in our class, in our exciting class, we will learn about the applications of them. Why we use resistors, why we use capacitors, how can we use the batteries, what is the series connection, what is the parallel connection. These are the things will be discussed in our class practical. That is why I suggest our students, right? That is why I suggest our students to buy some electronics components. Actually, if you buy those kinds of electronic components and practice from your home, so then you will become a master in robotics, right? So let's get back to what are the components, right? So basically, this is wrong. These are just the symbols. If you obtain a resistor and look at this, this will be like this, right? This is the photo of the actual resistor, right? On this resistor, you will have some different colors. That means each color represent the value of the resistors, right? We will learn in our future classes how can we identify the resistor, how can we obtain the benefits from particular resistors, right? So this is the picture of the resistor, and this one is also a resistor, right? You can notice this resistor will be in your smartphones or maybe in your laptops. These are the tiny electronics, right? In this surface mounting devices, right? That called as SMD devices, right? On those SMD devices, you will see these kinds of things. If you see this, this is the resistor, This one is a potentiometer, right? I will have a project by using a potentiometer, right? So in our future class, we will discuss how can we use this potentiometer, right? So this one is called as a variable resistor, right? This one is a fixed resistor. We can't change the value of this one. 220 ohm means this is fixed. We can't change it, right? So if we have this kind of particular resistor, that means we can change the resistance value of that one, right? So similarly, we will have these kinds of resistors as well, right? So this is also called as a potentiometer, and this is called as a variable resistor, right? So both are same, like same but different values. This one is a capacitor, right? So capacitor. So basically, why we use resistor? Resistor is used to restrict the flow of current, right? So let's say you have a 9 voltage battery, right? And you have an LED bulb with you, right? If you directly obtain a wire and connect the LED bulb with the battery, 9 voltage battery, what will happen? Your LED bulb will be blown out. So then after, you can't turn on your LED bulb. Why? Because it has been broken, right? So for that, in between the battery and the LED bulb, we have to put a resistor, right? So then the current will be reduced down. So then we can obtain the benefits from the LED bulb. That is how we use resistors. I will explain it in further classes. So today's class, right? In today's class, we will discuss about the theory parts. That means what are the components, how we can navigate, and those kinds of things will be discussed. On tomorrow's class onwards, right? The practical sessions will be started, right? Tomorrow's class onwards, the practical sessions will be started, right? So you as students have to engage with the exercises in order to become a master in robotics, right? So the next one is why we use capacitors. So we use capacitors in order to supply the voltage continuously to a circuit, right? So that is why we use it. So, but in robotics, we don't have circuits with capacitors, right? So basically, we are engaged with DC currents, right? So that is why we don't study this kinds of capacitors deeply. Cells. Cells means batteries, right? We will have batteries, right? So battery is used to supply a power to a particular circuit, right? So we can connect the battery in two ways, maybe in a series connection, maybe in a parallel connection, right? So this one, particularly this one is called as a series connection of batteries. If we connect batteries in series, so then the voltage will be added. Let's say this battery's voltage is 2 voltage. This one is 2, this one is 2, this one is 2, right? So all together, these all these voltages will be added together and provide the total voltage of 8 voltage from the ends, right? If you want to obtain 8 voltage, you have to have 2 voltage batteries connected in series connection, right? How can we connect in series? It's very simple, right? You just have to obtain the positive terminal and connect the wire to the negative terminal of the next battery. Then after, you have to obtain the positive terminal and connect the negative terminal of the battery. Then after, you have to obtain the positive terminal and negative terminal of the battery. Finally, we have to obtain the positive terminal and the first battery's negative terminal. So then the voltage in between these two terminals will be 8 voltage. That is how we obtain 8 voltage, right? So similarly, if you connect like this, particularly this one, obtain positive and connect it to positive. And then you have to obtain another wire, join together, and then make it to positive. And then you join wire to this one and make it to positive, and then obtain it. If you obtain like this, right? So in between these two terminals, the voltage will be same, 2 voltage, right? That means if it is a 2 voltage battery, this one is 2, this one is 2, this one is 2. Also, finally, the voltage will also be 2 voltage, right? But what is the difference in between this and this? You can think that in this circuit, this if we connect the batteries like this, the voltage will be added together. If we connect a circuit like this, the current will be added together, but the voltage will remain as same, right? We will learn about this one in our software session, right? So then you can practice and learn about these connections, series connection, parallel connections, right? So then we will have the electronics components about diodes, right? Diode means there are tons and tons of diodes are available for us to obtain. As an example, if I obtain a normal diode, the purpose is different, right? So the normal diode will only allow the current to flow in one direction, right? So let's say we have a bulb, 2 bulbs, right? And then we have a battery here, right? So you connect like this. What will happen? The battery, if the battery can supply the voltage to the bulbs, then these 2 bulbs will be turned on. Let's say you want to restrict the flow of current in order to pass to this bulb. You want to restrict the flow of current. So then you have to obtain this kind of diode and put it, right? So if you put a diode like this, so then this bulb will not be turned on, right? So that is why we use this one, right? It will allow the current to flow on this direction, right? So for that, you have to put a diode like this. You can put, but it's not a problem if you don't put it, right? Next one is LDR, right? LDR means light dependent resistor, right? So these things, right? So the LDR modules and the sensors will be discussed in our future classes, right? LED bulb, we know that, right? LED bulb means, right? If we apply voltage, if we supply the voltage to this bulb, this one, then we can obtain the light from this bulb. It is like an indicator whether the current is flowing or not. It's like an indicator, right? So you can see that in the LED bulb, if you obtain an LED bulb, right? So then you can notice that we have 2 legs, 2 pins. One pin will be larger, one pin will be smaller, right? So the larger pin means positive terminal. Shorter pin means negative terminal, right? So there are some colors available also, and also transistors, right? So we are not going to discuss about transistors, integrated circuits, and solar cells, right? We are not going to use them in our class, so that is why I am omitting. And also switches, right? There are tons of switches available. Why we use switches? In order to control the current flow, right? Whether we want to supply the current or not. Just suddenly we can use these kinds of switches, right? So similarly, we have different kinds of switches. This one is called as a toggle switch. This one is called as a push button, right? So there will be a difference. Toggle switch means, right? So it will be like this. Once we have turned on this one, it will always turn off. Push button means like this. Push button is like this. If we push this, when we are pushing, so then will be turned on. If we take the hand from this button, take out our hand, so then the button will be turned off, switch will be turned off, right? That is how it works, right? So there is a difference between push button and toggle switch, right? So basically in our class, this is not a one-way conversation, right? I will conduct lectures for 45 minutes, right? So then after the final 15 minutes for the students, right? So you can ask me questions, right? So I can understand these things. So you can ask them, right? So I'm open for our students to answer questions. You can ask whatever the questions regarding our robotics course, right? So if you can't understand anything, you can just simply ask. For that, you can you raise your hand. So then I will allow you to ask question, right? So you can raise your hand, right? Right. So next we will discuss about the controllers later, right? So we will have different kinds of controllers, maybe Arduino. This Arduino and the controller, how can we wire the pins will be discussed in our future classes, right? So don't worry about those kinds of things. Now I just wanted to explain what is electricity, right? So basically, right, electricity is simple, right? So just think about, right? So the water, right? So the water will be flown from a higher level to a lower level, right? So that is how the water will flow. If there will be an elevation, right? So then the water will be flown from a higher level to a low level, right? So likewise, electricity will also like that, right? So the electricity will be flowing from a higher voltage to a lower voltage, right? So as an example, you can think that current is flow of electrons, right? How many electrons are running in a conductor is called as flow of current, flow of electrons or the current, right? So that is current. How many electrons are passing inside a conductor, right? It's called as current, right? So we will in your mathematics, in your science class, you will learn about these things, right? Just I'm going to look after the practical sessions, right, in our course. Of course I can explain it to you what is called as electricity. That means the theoretical parts, right? Maybe I is equal to Q divided by A. Those kinds of formulas are there. If you want, I can explain them as well, right? So not a problem, right? But the current, the flow of electrons will be measured in amperes, right? So, but we have to be aware about the currents that are using in our class will be very, very, very low. That means we will use only the currents in milliamperes, right? In smaller amount, maybe we will use 20 milliampere, right? Maybe 20 milliampere. You know that, right? 20 milliampere means 20 divided by 1000 amperes, right? 20 divided by 1000 amperes. That means you can notice that 0.02 ampere, right? That is 20 milliampere, right? We will only use 20 milliampere, 30 milliampere, 40 milliampere currents. Only the small amount of currents we will learn, right? So that is called as current, right? So how many electrons are flowing inside a conductor per area, unit area, right? So voltage means force to push the electrons. That means, let's say you are pushing a person, right? So You can push the person slightly or hardly. You can push him, right? So that particular amount of pushing, you will exert the force. That force in electricity is called as voltage, right? So in voltage will be measured in volts, right? V. But in our robotics, we will only discuss about the voltages below 12 voltage, right? We will learn, or we will make some robots by using 5 voltage or 3.3 voltage or 12 voltage. That's all. Beyond 12 voltage, we can't work. As we grade 6 to 11 students, we can't work, right? It is prohibited, right? So we have to understand each student. No students can work on your home electricity, right? In our course or whatever, you can't work on your home electricity, right? Why? Because the voltage and the current will be very high in your home current, home supply. It is voltage will be 240 voltage and the current will be 5 ampere or 13 ampere, right? It is very large current, right? So you don't work on this kind of home circuits, right? Your home AC supply, maybe in your plug points, you can't work on those kinds of things, right? You don't work AC current, right? We just work on the DC current in smaller amounts, 5 voltage, 12 voltage, 3.7 voltage, like that, right? Resistance means it is restricting the flow of electrons through a conductor, right? So let's say as an example, I told you that you push a person, that is called as the force, right? You push. But the person, if the person is smaller, it is easy for you to push, right? If the person is larger, is a big person, it is hard for us to push, right? So that is called the, if it is a smaller person or the larger person, that is called as resistance, right? Restrict the flow of, right? So likewise in electricity, if it restricts the flow of current, so then it will be called as resistor. It will be measured in ohms, right? So we just don't need this one. And also we have to be aware about the safety, right? Before we get into the safety, I'm just going to explain about the circuit boards, right? Circuit boards are used to connect wires together, right? As an example, if I provide you two wires and I ask you to join them together, so what will you do? You will manually obtain those two kinds of wires and join, right? That is not a best practice. So just give me a minute. So if you want to join two wires together, what will you do? We have to obtain two wires together and join them, right? That is not the best practice. If you want to join the two wires together, we have to obtain a breadboard like this and connect each wire. For that, we have to understand how the breadboard is designed for, right? It's very simple, right? We can just see that, you can see that this particular horizontal line is connected together, right? And also this line is connected like this, right? So these dots are connected inside it, right? So similarly, these lines are also connected like this, right? So under the bottom layer, these two lines are connected together, right? That is how the breadboard is designed, right? So What is the benefit? Why we use these kinds of breadboards? Right? We have to use jumper cables, right? So those jumper cables having pins, we can connect them, we can point out them and obtain the benefit from them, right? So I will explain it in the software so that you can understand about the breadboards very well, right? So this is how the breadboards are designed with, and also dot boards. Dot board means each and every dot are different. Each and every dots are different, right? So no dot together is connected, right? There will be no dots connected together, right? So each are different. And on the line board, it's somewhat different, right? In the line board, these horizontal lines are connected together, right? But this line and this line are not connected together, right? So in the printed circuit boards, it's different, right? Whatever the shape of the board we like, we can manually design it and print it, right? So, but we don't use these components, right? The permanent, these are called as permanent mounting boards. We have to solder our electronics components inside the breadboards in order to obtain the benefit from them. But we don't involve in soldering practice, and we don't use these kinds of boards. We just only use this particular breadboard, right? So this is how the breadboard lines are connected inside it. So horizontal line is connected. This horizontal line is also connected. Similarly, this horizontal line and this horizontal lines are connected like that, right? On the middle portion of the breadboard, the vertical lines are connected like this, right? Right. Now we are going to discuss what are the types of wires are there. Basically, we have jumper wires and auto wires, right? Jumper wires means we have wires male to male wire and female to female wire, and finally we have female to male wire, right? If you look closely, male to male wire means we will have like this, right? We will have pins on each cable, right? It's a cable array. Each cable we have pins, right? By using this pin, right, this pin, we can connect it into the breadboard, right? On this breadboard, we can connect by using that male to male cable, right? So similarly, we have female to female to male cable as well. Three different kinds of cables are there. And also we will have auto wires, right? So circuit diagrams, right? So circuit diagrams we will discuss in our tomorrow's class, right? So what are the circuit diagrams are there, how we can connect this circuit, and what I'm going to give you another exercise, right? So these exercises will be discussed in our next class, right? Before we end this class, I just have to explain you the safety, right? So we have to be aware about the safety. After I have explained the safety, you can ask questions from what we have learned so far, right? So concerning safety, never work on a circuit while the circuit is powered up, right? So that means we can't work on the circuit that has been powered up, right? So let's say we have a battery here, right? We have a battery here, and then we give the power to this circuit. That means we have a sensors and motors, controllers, all are there, right? But the power is given to this circuit, right? What we have to do is, if you want to work on this circuit, you just have to remove this power, right? You have to disconnect the battery, and then you have to provide the, then you have to work on the circuit, right? So the next one is, do not connect power to a circuit until the circuit is finished, right? So that means what we have to do is we have to obtain a breadboard, right? So then on the breadboard, we have to arrange it, right? Maybe the sensors, the wires, I will explain in future how we can arrange them, right? So we have to arrange all the components, sensors, Arduino, wires, cables, etc., bulbs, LED bulbs, all the things should be arranged on the breadboard, right? Then after, finally, right? Finally, we have to give the power to the circuit. That is what we do. We have to arrange the battery, we have to arrange the sensor, all the components should be arranged. Then after we have arranged those things, finally, we have to give the power to the circuit. That is the best practice, right? So next one, if you smell anything burning or heating, immediately disconnect the circuit, right? If you hear anything burning or smelling, right, you have to immediately disconnect the circuit, right? So then you have to keep your work area dry, right? You can't work on a wet environment, right? If you provide water on your circuit, on your electronics components, those components will be damaged, right? So then after you can't restore your component, right? And also always wear safety goggles, right? It is better if you obtain a safety goggle and use them, right? It's advised, it's better, right? So be careful around large capacitor, right? So in our robotics course, we don't use capacitors, but however, if we are using large capacitor, you don't have to use large capacitors, right? So if you are using large capacitor and apply a voltage over the capacitor that has been designed for, and then the capacitor will be damaged, broken up, right? So we have to aware about that one. And then be especially careful when you solder, because a hot soldering iron can easily burn you. Right? In our basic course, we don't learn about soldering, right? So I highly advise you to don't do soldering. That means don't do bouting work, right? Don't do soldering. If you want to solder, what you can do? You can give the operation to your parents and ask them to solder. So then they will provide you the soldered items, right? So next one will be always work in a well ventilated space, right? So your space should be well ventilated, right? So the air should come in and go out, right? So have a safety equipment such as a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and a phone nearby, right? It is better to if you have these kinds of things, right? And also, last but not the least one, it is the important thing. Don't work on AC power source, right? I highly advise my students don't work on AC currents, right? It is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, right? So don't work on AC current. Just work on the small battery, DC battery, maybe 3 voltage, 5 voltage, 12 voltage. It's not a problem, right? But don't work on home current, right? Maybe your plug point, maybe in your meter box, right? You don't work on those kinds of things, right? Just we have to use the batteries, small batteries, right? Maybe 3 voltage, 5 voltage, 12 voltage batteries, right? Right. That is all about today's class. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I can answer your questions. If you don't have any question, we can continue our class as well. Right? I will explain the next things. Right? So if anyone has a question, right, you can raise your hand. So then I will unmute you So then you can ask me questions. Right. Ahmed, you can ask questions. Ahmed, you can ask question. What is your question?
I wanted to know what is the netboard, the Raspberry IS.
The Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, we control our actions by our brain, right? So maybe if you saw a ball is coming to hit you, what will you do? You will catch up the ball, right? So how can you catch up the ball? Your brain is ordering you to catch up it, right? So likewise in electronics, we will have controllers, right? Maybe we have those kinds of things will be discussed in our future classes, right? Like we will have the sensors and the actuators like LED bulbs, alarm systems, motors, etc. Right? All these components should be controlled in order to obtain a working invention, right? For that, there are several kinds of controllers. Maybe we have a PIC controller, Arduino controller, Raspberry Pi controller, PLC controller, right? So Raspberry Pi is an advanced controller rather than Arduino, right? Arduino, we can control a lot of things, but more than that, in Raspberry Pi, we can control more than that. Maybe it's like a small computer, right? We can attach our keyboard, we can attach our mouse, and we can play games. We can even make games on Raspberry Pi, right? So, but in our basic course, we are not going to discuss deeply about Raspberry Pi, but in our advanced robotics course, after the course ends, you can enroll to that course as well. On that course, we will learn about those difficult things in our future classes, right? Right. So if you don't have any question, you can lower your hand, right? So next one, Umar Sharaf, you can ask your question. Umar Sharaf, you can ask your question.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah. What is the problem?
No, sir. No, sir.
Right. The next one, Samar Singhal, you can ask me question. Sasti to Samar Singhal.
Sir.
Yeah. What is your question? Sasiru, what is your question?
Sir, do we need a very open area?
Sorry?
Sir, do we need a very open area?
Very open area to work on these things. That is what you asked me, right?
Yes, sir.
It is not necessary, but we can work on the open area. It's not a problem, but you have to be aware about the wet environment, right? You don't have to be under the wet environment, as well as you don't work on the AC currents, right? In your home supply, you don't work, right? Just we work on small battery and small currents, right?
Okay, sir.
Right. Next one, Umar Sharaf, do you have any questions?
Sir,
Yeah,
how can I buy this kind of products?
these kinds of components, right? So basically, you have two options. One option is you can obtain the components from me, right? If you contact me via WhatsApp, right? I will explain you what are the components available in each kit, and then you can obtain it from me. I will courier it to you, right? Via courier service, I can send it to you. And if you want, you can also obtain the components. I will provide you the list. What are the components to be needed in our class? I will upload the list in our WhatsApp group, right? And you can obtain the components from electronics shop, right? Not in the electrical shop, but on the electronics shop, right? And The next one, AMR Ahmed. What is the question?
I don't have any questions. I just asked my question now.
Lower your hand. So, right. Next one, Sasiru Samar Singh. What is your question? Sasiru, do you have any question? If you don't have
No,
any,
sir.
if you don't have any question, you can lower your hand, right? Right. Umar Sharaf. And next one, Mihna.
Sir, now what is PIC?
PLC. This one, right? So this one is also a controller, like Arduino, Raspberry Pi. This one is also a controller, but we are not going to look after this one. Why? Because it's an advanced controller. This will be used in our large machinery in the factories or in the large machineries. We will use this one, PLC programming, and we will not going to discuss about this one in our basic course, right? If you want, you can learn on the advanced course about this one. This one will be controlling the sensors and the actuators, the motors, etc. Right? It's also like a control.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Next one,
Excuse me, sir. In the capacitors, what's that? 102, 103, it will be written some numbers in the capacitors.
yeah, basically each capacitor has different codings, right? So if the capacitor is written like this, right, that means 16 voltage, right? So if the capacitor is written 16 voltage, right, that means we can't provide more than that, right? If we apply 17 voltage to this capacitor will be broken, right? So that is the limit. Under this voltage, it can work, but this one is 107 is how much is the capacitance, right? So 107 microfarads, right? Some capacitor will have different kinds of codings, maybe like this number, right? For that, we have to obtain the manual of the capacitors, and then we have to look after what is the value, what is the maximum voltage that we can supply to a capacitor, right?
Thank you, sir.
Right.
And sir,
In also resistors also, there will be some bands, right? Bands are indicating how much is the resistance value, right? We will learn in future what is the resistance of this one, how can we identify the resistance in our future classes, right? So those things will be very interesting. Yeah, what is your next question?
What software we will be using to make breadboards?
Sorry, what?
You said right, one software we will be using to make breadboards.
Yeah, yeah. I will explain it in our future classes about how we can enroll to that software, how we can step by step go and enroll the software in the future. I will explain it to you how you can enroll to the software by step, right? So then you can make the projects on that software. If you don't have the ability to buy the components, we can practice by using the software, right? Even though if you have components, you have to practice from the software in order to protect your electronics components from damaging, right? First of all, we will design each system in the software. So then after we will practice. In the software, it's very simple, right? We just have to drag and drop the components, and then we can navigate with these things, right? It will be very interesting, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Next question, Umar Shara.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, can you upload notes in the WhatsApp?
Yeah, I will provide you the PDF files as well as the recorded videos and more study materials for my students to learn something new, right? I will definitely provide. Yeah. Do you have any question? Any other questions? Right. So I'm just quickly go through this recap, right? What we have done, learned so far, right? So these are the course contents that we have, right? So we will discuss about the projects. These are the 8 projects that I will cover, but you by learning this only 8 projects, you can make ton of projects, right? It's definitely it will be sure you can make ton of projects, and also the electronic components, right? So we have resistor, capacitors, cells, right? If we connect the cells in series connection, the voltage will be added. Maybe if we connect 4 batteries, 2 voltage batteries, 4 batteries, so then the total voltage will be added as 8 voltage. If we obtain 2 voltage batteries 4 and then we connect like this, so then the voltage will remain as same as 2 voltage, but the current will be added up, right? So maybe the battery have the current voltage of current, right? So maybe it is 1 ampere. So then 1 ampere, 1 ampere, 1 ampere, 1 ampere. So totally we can obtain 4 amperes, right? So we have potentiometers. Potentiometers means we can change the resistance, right? In the resistance, normal resistors, we can't change the resistance, right? In the electronic components, we have learned about diodes, right? But diodes, we are not going to learn deeply, right? So we will use these kinds of LED bulbs, right? So we will, in our future classes, it will be exercise based one, right? I will provide you some examples and exercise for you to work. What you have to do is you have to practice the exercises in the software as well as on the real components. You have to obtain the real components and then you have to practice it. This will be very interesting, right? Our previous students were more interesting on this topic, right? They have learned a lot of things and they asked me to start the advanced course as soon as possible, right? So that is the thing. And then we have learned about the switches. There are tons and tons of switches available in the market. Those are each switch is used for different kinds of purposes, right? This one is called as a push button. This one is called as a toggle switch, right? So there will be a difference between toggle switch and the push button. So then we can navigate along with them, right? These are the controllers that exist in the market, but there are also other controllers as well. But here in our course, we will discuss about Arduino, right? So in our course, we will discuss deeply about Arduino, but not about the PIC and Raspberry Pi, right? So next one is current. Current is called as flow of electrons. Voltage, force to push the electrons. How much is the force that is pushing the electrons in the conductor, right? It's called as voltage. Resistance, restrict the flow of current, right? So the next one will be, we have analyzed about the safety, right? So we don't work on the AC current, right? So we don't have to work on the wet environment. We just have to work on a dry environment likewise, right? So then we learned about the breadboards. These horizontal lines are connected. These horizontal lines are connected. In the middle portion, vertical lines are connected, right? So we will only use this breadboard in our course and connect the components, right? So here we have 3 kinds of wires in the jumper cables, right? Male to male, all are pins. Female to female, all are holes. Female to male, holes, and on the this side we have pins, right? And also auto wires. Auto wires mean the normal wires that we use to connect it, right? So in future class, we will learn about the circuit diagrams and how we can connect them. What are the examples? Those kinds of things will be discussed in our future class, right? So thank you for attending the class and sharing our videos, and ask your friends also to join our class, right? So thank you for attending the class. We will end up the class.